So last week we touched on the different parts of a water cycle. One would be the condensation, where water beads up on surfaces, clouds show condensation. And another part of the water cycle that we touched on was the evaporation part. That's when our liquids turn into water vapor. Most times we can't see the vapor, which is under in the air and around us. So I'd like to read to you the next section of water evaporates from Earth's surface. The sun drives the water cycle. Energy from the sun heats Earth's surface and changes liquid water into water vapor. The ocean is where most of the evaporation takes place. But water evaporates from lakes, rivers, soil, wet city streets, plants, animals, and wherever there is water. Water evaporates from all parts of Earth's surface, both water and land. So you'll see that the direction of water, the water is moving from the surface of the Earth up to the sky, into the atmosphere. Water evaporates from all of Earth's surface. Header. Water falls back to Earth's surface. Wind blows clouds around. Clouds end up over mountains, forests, cities, deserts, and the ocean. When clouds are loaded with condensed water, the water falls back to Earth's surface as rain. If the temperature is really cold, the water will freeze and fall to Earth's surface as snow, sleet, or hail. And that's what we've experienced recently in our region. Water falls back to Earth's surface as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Thinking about the water cycle. We'll do this later on together, but for you to begin to think about it, work with a partner to review this simple diagram on page 45. Select a starting point in the cycle. Describe one part of the cycle to your partner. Your partner then describes what happens next. Take turns describing the events until you return to the starting point. Cycle sounds a lot like circle, and we can say there's a starting point and ending point that goes into a circle. And it keeps going around and around and around. Climate regions. What's the weather like today? What was it last year on this date? Probably just about the same. We can predict what the weather will be like next year because weather tends to follow a pattern over a long time. The big patterns of weather describe a region's climate. Climate describes the typical weather conditions in a region. The climate in Hawaii is quite different from the climate in Minnesota. The Hawaiian climate is warm, sunny, and pleasant all year long. The Minnesota climate is freezing cold in the winter and hot and humid during the summer. Meteorologists have created models to describe climate in different regions of Earth. The general rule is that a place close to the equator has a warm climate, and a place farther from the equator has a colder climate. With this simple rule, regions fall into three broad groups. The polar zone at the north and south poles has a very cold climate with long winters. So if this was the ball, we're looking at the poles, north and south. The tropical zone near the equator, so if we took a belt and put it around our belly, that would be like the equator of the Earth, has a hot climate and no winter. Everything in between is in the temperate zone. With this simple model, most of the North America is one climate zone. So temperate zone is where we live. We have our different seasons because of that. This model with just 3 zones is a little too simple. It doesn't show all the variations in climate. The most important factors to define a climate zone are the average temperature and the amount of precipitation throughout the year. I'm going to reread that again. The 2 most important factors in defining a climate zone are the average temperature, so that's like the temperature over a long period of time, and the amount of precipitation, that's like how much rain, sleet, and snow fall in that region throughout the year. Let's look at a more complex model that has 12 climate zones. We will look at those zones in North America. So we can see that we have different climate zones named tropical, as we just read about. This one shows a desert zone, temperate zone, which we just read about. Now here's a subarctic and a polar, which we did include. So here we have not only 3, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different zones. So if you're using this color-coded key on our map, you'll see our North America region has many different types. And this is largely due to the different wind currents and the different water vapor throughout that area. Yeah, I often wondered why San Francisco didn't often have the same climate as where we live, because San Francisco is almost directly west from where we live. But this is all due to the different regions of the Rocky Mountain range that goes from north to south, the different Pacific Ocean currents, and all of the wind that travels back and forth. Okay, we're going to pause here, and then I'd like you to complete the activity I included on Google Classroom.